Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Steve Wiedemann. We warmly welcome the family of Corporal Ernest Edward Bernard, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Ernest Bernard. Ernest Bernard was born in 1887, one of 8 children of Lewis and Sarah Bernard of Carrington, near Newcastle in New South Wales. Ernest's father Lewis worked on the railways and the family spent time living in Goulburn. Ernest Bernard went to school nearby and joined his brothers in the pre-war Royal Australian Artillery. He was a bandsman with the Garrison Company in Sydney before being medically discharged in 1910. He married Marjorie Whitten. 3 years later, on the eve of the First World War, was working as a tram conductor. Bernard enlisted at Victoria Barracks in May 1915, but deserted camp at Moore Park 3 months later, following orders that he be transferred from the infantry to the Special Railway and Tramway Company. The military authorities put out a warrant for his arrest, but by the time it was released, he had already re-enlisted at the depot camp at Agricultural Park, forming part of the reinforcement group for the 17th Battalion that sailed for Egypt in December 1915. The Gallipoli campaign had ended by the time Bernard arrived. However, following months were spent training as the AIF underwent a major restructure in preparation for its departure to the Western Front. As part of that restructure, Bernard was promoted to corporal and transferred to the newly formed 5th Light Trench Mortar Battery, which sailed for France in March 1916. Now mustered as a mortarman, Bernard formed part of the 3-man gun team that operated the battery's 8 3-inch Stokes mortars, a new and surprisingly simple weapon that was integrated into infantry brigades and which provided devastatingly accurate fire support from frontline positions. Having gone into the trenches for the first time in the relatively quiet nursery sector near the town of Armentières, Bernard survived the German raid against the 5th Brigade in the Bordeaux salient, and which resulted in 2 of the battery's Stokes mortars being lost to the enemy. Despite this, the 5th Light Trench Mortar Battery fired on German machine gun positions and sniper loopholes, as well as supporting an Australian trench raid before being transferred to the Somme in July 1916. The 2nd Division fought its major action on the Western Front at Pozieres. On the night of the 27th of July 1916, it made a costly and unsuccessful attack against a formidable German stronghold east of the village, resulting in over 2,000 casualties. Firing in support of the infantry were the gunners of the 5th Light Trench Mortar Battery, who were subjected to German shell fire during the assault and afterwards. At some point during the fighting, Bernard was killed. Aged 30 at the time of his death, his body was never recovered from the battlefield. Today he's commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux alongside 10,737 Australians killed in France with no known grave. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Ernest Bernard, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.